Prayer Demand by Paramhansa Yogananda from Whispers from Eternity. Demand to be freed from self-created evil habits and temptations. Teach me, O Spirit, to distinguish between my soul's lasting happiness and the temporary pleasures of the senses, touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. Strengthen my willpower. Teach me not to be enslaved by bad habits. Teach me to be guided only by good habits, formed by good company and meditation. Teach me above all to be guided by thy wisdom. Teach me to shun evil by right judgment and discrimination. Teach me willingly to adopt all good ways, influenced only by inner freedom, and not compelled to evil by hardened habits. So today's topic is, why do devotees fall? Paramhansa Yogananda said, 3 greatest human delusions are sex, wine, which includes intoxicants of all kinds, and money, which includes power and fame. And he said, as soon as the desire, the first thought of that desire arises, that is the time to catch it. It's important to catch it as fast as soon as you can, because it's a slippery slope. We might say, it's just, a passing thought, or it's just in the mind. But everything is in our mind, and everything starts there. Sooner or later, if you continue, then you lose the freedom to stop thinking about it. He also said, you are not safe from delusion until you attain the highest nirvikalpa samadhi. Let's take an example of Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 closest disciples of Jesus Christ. To be one of the 12, he must have been an advanced soul. And Yoganandaji actually said he was a prophet. Judas was a prophet. But still, he betrayed his guru, sold Jesus to the authority, which led to his crucifixion. Jesus, throughout his ministry, he was challenging the authority openly, criticizing them. And Judas didn't think that was a wise strategy. And he thought, my master doesn't know how to deal with this authority. He always says things that upset them. And, in this way, how can he become a king of the Jews? I know better. I can handle the situation better. That's what probably went into his mind. His ego, the pride. Even though he was an advanced soul, he fell this way. He was not safe yet. His delusion of Maya is part of this world, unfortunately, and Satan, the dark force, will be there always. But Satan can't do anything to us until we invite him into our life. Just like God and Guru, Guru doesn't come to our life until we say, I need help. He would say, I'll wait until you call me, maybe in this lifetime, or maybe in the next lifetime. It doesn't matter, I'll wait. Satan too will wait, but as soon as he finds that slightest opening in our consciousness, he'll sneak in. That, let's take an example that is probably more familiar to our life. I sometimes speak to people who just who finished Raja Yoga, our Raja Yoga classes, or level 3 a while ago. And often I hear them say, when I was coming to the classes, my meditation was very regular and it was so beautiful. Now that the classes are over, my meditation is not that regular and somehow I cannot get back to it. Why? Because when you stay away from the spiritual environment, you allow that Maya to come into our life. You unknowingly open the door for Satan to come in. How to prevent this? Yoganandaji told his disciples, some of you will fall, but it needn't be if you stay in tune. The key is attunement. There's this story. Once Yoganandaji was strolling on the beach near his hermitage in Encinitas, Southern California. There, fishermen came back from the sea, and they were bringing their boat to the shore. After many hours of work, they came back empty-handed. So Master Yoganandaji said, "You're giving up?" The fisherman said, "Yeah, no fish." And then Yoganandaji said, "Why don't you try just one more time?" And somehow, because of the tone of his voice, the fishermen felt that they should go. So they went out to the sea once again, and this time they got a big catch. And Swami Kriyananda concluded this story with the following statement. And thus was added another puzzling item to the growing legend in the local community of Encinitas about this strange, kindly Swami, around whom things seemed somehow always to happen for the best. It's a charming story, isn't it? But it also shows Guru's love for us. Just try once more. When we go through hard times or failures, we should never think that's God's will. Failure is never God's will for us. The failure comes because there was some flow in our attunement with God's will, with cosmic law. It is we who created it. God and Guru are always there, just encouraging us. Just try just once more. And Swami Kriyananda said, Yoganandaji worked with infinite patience with his disciples to overcome especially those 3 major delusions. Guru wants nothing from us but our own improvement. How about us, though? Are we receptive? Are we sensitive? Are we listening to Guru's silent whisper or his nudge? Swami Kriyananda made an observation of different kinds of disciples that he saw when he was in Yoganandaji's ashram. First kind of disciples, those who advanced most quickly on the spiritual path are those who received the Guru completely into their consciousness. They were receptive, they were open, they were listening. Second category, those who sought to maintain their mental freedom by not opening fully to Guru's influence. They advanced slowly. If you think about our life, we sometimes say, yeah, I want to get his advice, his guidance on my meditation, but, maybe not for my diet or, food. Let's say, then third category, those who insist on maintaining their own opinions in everything never seemed to advance. Oh, I know what I want to do. I know what I need to do. I know what works for me, what doesn't work for me, just like Judas. How then can Guru help you to change? Swami Kriyananda, when he first came to Yoganandaji, he had a tendency to doubt. He didn't doubt Yogananda as his guru, but he couldn't help doubting what he said. Eventually, unfortunately, he got over that tendency, but how? He said, the answer to doubt is not intellectual answers, but it is love. When we try to solve or tackle this problem or answer, we solve one, and the next one will come up very soon. There's no end. But when you love God and Guru, all doubts disappear. Because to love means to raise our consciousness, to attune ourselves with the infinite, with God. And God is love. He doesn't have doubts. He doesn't have fear or hatred. Perfect love casts away all darkness. I'll just end with Krishna's promise in the Gita. He said, immerse your consciousness in me alone. Direct all your discrimination toward finding me. Beyond any doubt, then, you shall come to me. Jai Guru.
So yes, our topic is why do devotees fall? And by understanding how devotees fall, we want to understand how not to do that. And so Sri Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, Chika was talking about how delusion is a slippery slope. So Sri Krishna tells us how that slope exactly looks like and when do we get on that slope. So he says, if one ponders on sense objects, there springs up attraction to them. From attraction grows desire. Desire, impatient for fulfillment, flames to anger. From anger there arises infatuation. From infatuation ensues forgetfulness of the higher self. From forgetfulness of the higher self follows degeneration of our discrimination. And when discrimination is lost, there follows the annihilation of one's spiritual life. Right? So what started as a single thought of attraction in your mind can very quickly lead you into the downward spiral if we are not vigilant, as Chika was mentioning. So, I was thinking one great example is I would see my mom go shop for saris when I was young, and many ladies are here in the room, so you will relate a lot to this. When I would see the salesman showing all the different saris, my mom would buy one or two, whatever she needed, and the salesman would keep showing, Madam, dekho to. And my mom is saying, nahi bhaiya, bas, ho gaya. I have what I want. Then he'll not listen. He said, देखो देखने में क्या जा रहा है? ये बनारसी साड़ी, ये ऐसे, ये वैसे. Touch तो करो उसको. Then he will put the sari on her shoulder. Oh wow, how beautiful it is looking. Yeah, and then she will end up buying 5. So what happened? Someone would think the salesman, the good salesman, will pry on your naivete to think, oh, what harm is there in looking? देखने में क्या जा रहा है? Let's see what's there in the market. But then, from that pondering on sense objects, springs up attraction, desire, and then that desire needs to be fulfilled. So as devotees, when we are serious on the spiritual path, it's very important to catch it as soon as we can. As Chika was also mentioning, Yogananda ji said that is why you should, if you have never had a drink before, you should never take a sip of alcohol in your life, because the moment you take that sip, you do not know what tendencies in your subconscious mind will be awakened, and sooner or later you might find yourself reaching a point where you cannot come out of it. So it is very important to stay vigilant, but there are times when we lose our vigilance very easily, and there are those openings through which Satan can enter and draw us into delusion. So Yogananda ji said, interestingly, he said, I do not ask you to overcome delusion, I am only asking you to resist it. Right? So our past bad habits, our tendencies are always nudging us to behave in a way that is not conducive to our spiritual development, but we just have to resist it and allow that karma to pass. So how can we build up that strength of resistance is going to be, the key to not falling on the spiritual path. So there are many things we can do, but I thought of sharing a few. And one is attunement. And attunement has a lot of facets to it, as Chika was also talking a lot about attunement. The first thing I was thinking with reference to attunement is loyalty. Yogananda ji said that loyalty is the first law of God. And in the beginning of one's spiritual search, he said it is all right to see what is out there, to understand what you connect with. But once you find your guru, once you find your path, and once you know that this is for me, then we should stop looking here and there. There was a disciple of Yogananda ji, his name was Roy Davis, and he had a tendency to read a lot of spiritual books from different spiritual teachers. And Yogananda ji kept telling him, don't do it, it will confuse you. Too much spiritual reading leads to spiritual indigestion, because in your state of consciousness, you are not able to assimilate all the different perspectives of the great masters. And even though they are talking about the same thing, it might confuse you. So just stick to one teaching. So he didn't listen. And he would hide some books under his bed sometimes and just read them at night, or whatever different spiritual teachers. And Yogananda ji saw that he was getting out of tune. So one day, in perhaps a public congregation like this, he called Roy onto the stage and he said, "Dear friends, Roy here is a spiritual prostitute." Wow, that's powerful. So then he realized his error and he fell to his guru's feet and he said, "I'm sorry." And Yogananda ji, of course, endlessly forgiving, the guru always is, and he said, it's all right. But now you understand why I was wanting you to stay attuned and stay loyal to the path that you have chosen. So that is very important. Then our sadhana is perhaps the most important to develop that inner attunement with the guru. Yogananda ji said that deeper, longer, and thirsty meditation will lead us to samadhi. So deeper means trying to withdraw our consciousness into the spine more and more away from the senses in every meditation. Longer means longer. So whatever you are doing right now, longer means longer. And in the Autobiography, we find the sleepless saint meditating for 20 hours and saying, "Oh, I don't know if I have found favor in God's eyes." And Yogananda ji is saying, "What are you saying? You are meditating for 20 hours and you are saying this. What about us, mere mortals and beginners on the spiritual path?" But there is no end to our depth and our length of meditation. So always trying to introspect and see how can we lengthen it, how can we deepen it as much as possible in our lives. And thirsty, of course, meditating with that yearning and devotion. So loyalty, sadhana, and the next is seva. The path that Yogananda ji laid out for us, he always urged us to balance sadhana and seva together. And many people think they can get by one or the other, that I will do only meditation and get by, or I will only serve and get by. But we have seen, at least in my short time on the spiritual path, people can really get out of tune if they go to the extremes. It is best to meditate deeply and also to serve the Guru. And he said that when you serve the Guru and when you serve God selflessly, it is as good as meditation. So both are needed. And finally, satsang. Loyalty, sadhana, seva, and satsang. There were two most advanced male disciples of Yogananda ji. One was Rajarshi Janakananda and one was Yogacharya Oliver Black. So Yogananda ji told both of them to come and see him as much as possible. Now both of these disciples were A, highly spiritually advanced, and B, they were successful, busy businessmen in that time. And as busy as both of them were, Rajarshi Janakananda would come to the ashram whenever he would find an opportunity and meditate with the Guru and be at the ashram. But Yogacharya Oliver Black, he didn't come. And Yogananda ji knew that he has the time, but he thinks that he can get there by himself just through his meditation. And then he said about him, he says, Oliver thinks he can get there by himself, but he will find out soon. Spiritually, he is very advanced, but he is bogging down. He knows there is something the matter, but he doesn't know what it is. Attunement with the Guru, you see, is essential, and it must be on all levels, right? So sometimes we might think, oh, I don't need to go to the center, the satsang, I'll just meditate at home and just relax and not have to commute and all these things. But then you will find sooner or later, if you are introspecting and if you are discerning, you will see that there is a subtle shift in your consciousness which is taking you and making you out of tune. Even for myself personally, if I am not at the ashram for even 2 or 3 days, I can tell a significant difference in my consciousness. And that is scary. That is scary because the moment you let your guard down, you are going in the opposite direction. And there is no standing still on the spiritual path. Either you are going forward or you are going backward. You can't say, now I'm resting, right? So always keeping these things in mind and pairing them with the greatest thing which Yogananda ji said, devotion. Devotion, he said, and I found this quote recently, it's very interesting. He said, devotional demand is greater than law, the law of cause and effect, because it touches the heart of God and makes him answer his naughty and good children alike. Right? So I found a very interesting story. I also hadn't read this before. There was a disciple of Yogananda ji, and in the previous life, he had been a disciple also, but he had left the path and done all sorts of wrong things. So in Yogananda ji's life, this disciple one day walks into the ashram and Yogananda ji sees him and he says, You shouldn't have come in this life. And the disciple is like, I don't know what you're saying, but I'm here. So Yogananda ji said, okay. And then, he invited him to stay, join the monastery and be with the monks. And Yogananda ji explained later to everyone that his karma was very bad, such that he was not destined to find me in this life. But because he has a great amount of devotion, he is here. And he was an utter nuisance at the ashram. He would trouble all the monks with, incessant demands. And he would call Yogananda ji at 2 or 3 a.m. at night, because he knew that the Guru doesn't sleep and that he is free. That's the only time he is free from his outer involvements. So he used to call him. And then Yogananda ji wanted to go to his desert retreat to complete his writings on the commentaries of Gita and such. And so he told the monks, now please don't tell him for heaven's sake where I'm going. Because he had really kept his location a secret so that he would not be bothered with interviews and engagements constantly. So no one knew except for maybe a couple of monks. And Swami Kriyananda was there with him, with Yogananda ji at the desert retreat. So one day, this troublesome disciple who apparently had great devotion, he showed up at the desert retreat. And the monks were surprised. And they said, who told you that that master is here? And he said, no one told me. I was missing my Guru, so I prayed deeply to God. I got in my car and I said, God, tell me where he is. And he guided me to this place, and here I am. So where is he? I need to see him. So that's the power of devotion. Isn't that a sweet story? That even though his karma, his tendencies, whatever they might be doing, but he's very clear that I love my Guru, I might be a nuisance, I might be naughty, but I want to be with him. And so if we follow these simple principles, we make our lives simpler. Of course, the spiritual path never becomes easier, but we can make it simpler by keeping in mind our attunement through loyalty, sadhana, seva, and satsang, and by developing our devotion. And at the end, if we do fall, as Judas did, no one is lost forever. And Yogananda ji said, even Judas found God in Yogananda ji's lifetime as a disciple of Ramakrishna. So if Judas can find God after making such a grave error, then I think we are all on the good path. And so let's all keep that in mind and grow in our devotion to God and Gurus. God bless you.